Hasten here, Israel Uncensored, the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, August 13th, 2018, the second day of Elul 5778. Hope you are doing well in your part of the world. Yes, Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, right around the corner as we prepare for the high holidays, beginning with the month of Elul, a time for reflection and introspection, a time to assess our lives, to repent, to say sorry to our fellow man for everything that we have done against him this past year. A frightening time of year, hoping that God will inscribe us for a good life, for health and happiness and only good things in the upcoming year. Hope you're doing well. Get in touch with me during the week, Josh at thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter, at Josh Hasten. I'll admit I am not in the best of moods. I mean, it has been a wild week since we've spoken last here on the Land of Israel Network, and pretty frustrated. I'm certainly frustrated and upset. And I'm going to use this venue, my radio show, I guess, to get out some of that anger and frustration. Maybe it's radio therapy. Maybe I just coined a new term. But I'll bring you all the latest news here. I am in Jerusalem right now, the eternal capital of the Jewish people. But since we spoke last, hundreds of rockets fired at our brothers and sisters in southern Israel. And first of all, we should do everything in our power to support the South. I saw a rally. We'll get to what happened, but I saw a rally led by residents of the South on Saturday night in Tel Aviv, demanding equality, demanding that people recognize their plight, what they're going through. I mean, this has been going on not just since last week. I mean, this has been 17 plus years of rockets raining down, shot by terror groups in Gaza down on the south. But they just want normal lives. You know, you have a whole generation of kids down there who are suffering from different traumas, PTSD, from so many years under rocket fire. And it amazes me how run-of-the-mill it has become, whether it's 200 rockets which were fired Wednesday night and Thursday into Israel. But this should not be the norm. It should not be acceptable. Things shouldn't change if a rocket is fired on a bigger city further away, Beersheba or Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and I'm not hoping that should happen. But I just have this sense that because rockets were only fired or mortars are only fired landing in the communities surrounding the border, that life goes on as usual. And that's why they protested, several hundred from what I understand, on the Ayalon Highway in Tel Aviv on Saturday night, saying our lives are just as important and the lives of our children are just as valuable as those living in other parts of the country, and I can't agree more. And I mean, I have seen some positive this week, shows a lot of support from different communities in different areas for those in the South. For example, I know in Gush Etzion, the tourism department sent buses down and brought the children and the families to events happening in the Gush to give people just a little bit of time off from having to run to the rockets. And I've seen people opening their hearts, so I'm not saying that I haven't. But there's just like a general, in my opinion, a feeling, and I can't speak for those in the South, just a feeling of them being alone down there. And it's horrible, again, not to diminish or downplay any of those who have done amazing things for the residents of the South, but enough is enough. So, might as well just talk about it. What happened, of course, Hamas firing 200 rockets into southern Israel, and then we hear reports of a ceasefire, the IDF striking over 150 targets in Gaza, reports of a ceasefire. I'm still not exactly sure the situation because Israel denying that there is a ceasefire. But what does a ceasefire really mean with Hamas, a terror organization committed to our destruction? Ceasefire is nothing. A ceasefire is another opportunity for them to rearm themselves From what I see here, it's a unilateral ceasefire, and Israel hasn't even accepted it. But that being said, the Hamas leaders are still standing. They're declaring victory over Israel in the latest round. It's just a matter of time before they launch rockets again. And what has really changed on the ground? You had several dozen Israelis injured. Israel destroyed empty buildings and other targets. Maybe they did some damage to the Hamas. I don't know. Maybe they did. I can't really tell. Has it made a dent? Has anything really changed? Or are we just in this game again of whenever Hamas feels it's in their interests to fire the rockets, they'll go ahead and do so? I say turn off the electricity in Gaza. I don't understand why we're so happy and so proud of ourselves for distributing tons of humanitarian aid to Gaza each and every day, yet Hamas takes all of that aid and uses it for their terror offensives, uses the fuel for the rockets, uses the construction material, the building material to construct more terror tunnels. And somehow our different bodies are proud and tweeting how wonderful we are and how we're doing such good work on behalf of the residents of Gaza. I don't understand why they have electricity, why they have internet to continue the incitement. I'm sure the people who would feel the impact immediately if we turned off the electricity permanently, I'm sure they would decide once and for all that they had enough of Hamas, and they would do something to overthrow their leaders. They would say enough is enough. Those who want to lead normal lives, who have not been brainwashed entirely by the Hamas evil regime down in Gaza. It's time to think outside the box. It's time to stop doing the same old thing over and over again, bombing sand dunes and buildings, just waiting for the next round. So I was going to get right to the news, but it's just a feeling I had this week, folks, about the situation down there, unfortunately. Just another round, and our residents of the South living on the Gaza border, they're the ones paying the price. I'm ready to get back to Gaza in a minute, but I do want to go to other things going on in the news. Saturday night in the heart of Tel Aviv, tens of thousands protest, at least in the headlines, it says protest the nation-state law at an Arab-led rally in Tel Aviv. Were they really protesting the nation-state law, or were they there to call for the destruction of the state of Israel, waving PLO flags, a flag adopted by the PLO in 1964, 3 years before there were ever such thing as a so-called settlement, a Jewish community in Judea and Samaria? For all those who think it's all about the settlements, and I don't use that word really, 3 years before there ever was a Jewish community in Judea and Samaria in modern times, this organization was created to destroy the state of Israel. Yet Arabs with Israeli citizenship holding a gathering, a rally, Saturday night, waving the PLO flag, saying the following: with spirit and blood, we will free Palestine. If that's not incitement to violence, I don't know what is. With spirit and blood, we will free Palestine. Remember, these are citizens of the state of Israel, Israeli Arabs, and there were Israeli Jews there as well. They should be embarrassed to be marching in such a rally with PLO flags, openly calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. The citizenship of these people needs to be taken away. This is incitement to violence. This is not free speech. They are calling for the murder of millions of Jews in the state of Israel, and they are residents of the state of Israel. Israel should start by taking away their health care benefits and taking away their education that they're receiving and all the benefits and opportunities they're receiving as citizens of the state of Israel. And if that's not enough, then Israel should take away their citizenship. If they are not willing to live here peacefully, if they're inciting to violence, these people should be arrested. And if you're not happy here, there are plenty of Arabs here who are happy with citizenship living here in the state of Israel. But if you're not happy and you want to side with the PLO, so go live in Gaza. Take away their citizenship. I mean, this is like, the basics of what Israel should be doing. There is freedom of speech here. I recognize that. But there are lines to freedom of speech, and those lines were crossed. And it's sad that these images are from Tel Aviv, downtown Tel Aviv, the heart of Tel Aviv. These aren't images from Gaza that I'm looking at here online and in the newspaper here. This is Tel Aviv, in the heart of the country, talking about with spirit and blood, we will free Palestine. This is an abomination, and let's see if Israel does anything. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. To all the listeners out there, I'm sorry. I promise I will bring some optimism today. There are some amazing things going on here, as there are each and every day here in the Jewish state of Israel. But this was a complete abomination. And I'm waiting for our leaders or somebody to step up and say, this is not acceptable. And there is a price to pay if you are a traitor to the state of Israel. If you're waving these flags and you're calling for the blood of millions of Jews here in Israel, there should be a price to pay. Prime Minister Netanyahu responding to the rally in Sunday's cabinet meeting, saying that the rally and the flying of the PLO flag is proof that the nation-state law is a necessity. Netanyahu said, "We heard the calls. With blood and fire, we will redeem Palestine. Many of the demonstrators want to abrogate the law of return, cancel the national anthem, fold up our flag, cancel Israel as the national state of the Jewish people. It is precisely," said the Prime Minister, reported by the Jerusalem Post, "it is precisely for this that we passed the nation-state law. We are proud of the state, our flag, and our national anthem. Israel is a Jewish and democratic state." So that's a start, I guess, calling out those who demonstrated there. But I think more needs to be done. I think there needs to be a price to pay. I see here other signs accusing Israel of being an apartheid state. But you wave that PLO flag in Tel Aviv, calling for the blood of thousands and millions, there should be a price to pay. Now, getting back to the situation in Gaza, again, since we spoke last, over 200 rockets fired by terror groups in Gaza. I know that for those of you who have the Code Red application on your phone, wherever you are in the world, and a lot of people actually in solidarity, and to know what's going on here in Israel, have the app on their phone, the Tzeva Adom, the Code Red warning siren, which goes off in the south and in other places when rockets are fired. I know people were following that. I mean, it was going off all night long on, I believe it was Wednesday night, over 200 rockets fired. And the Israeli Security Cabinet met on Sunday to discuss the situation in the south, Israel demanding nothing less than a complete ceasefire from Hamas. Prime Minister Netanyahu said, he said Israel's objective was to restore quiet to the residents of the south and the area adjacent to the Gaza Strip. This goal will be achieved in full. Netanyahu spoke as Israel is working on a three-pronged approach to Gaza, reported by the Jerusalem Post here: preparations for a military campaign, an understanding by which calm is restored, and the possibility of approving a long-term and extensive ceasefire deal. Ceasefire deal is worth nothing. Ceasefire with Hamas is worth zero. Okay? So, number one, those who believe that there's a ceasefire now, apparently Israel has not agreed to any type of ceasefire. But even if we do agree to a ceasefire, I guess that's why it's not so important whether there is or isn't a ceasefire deal, because nothing Hamas signs can be taken as something legitimate. There's no such thing as ceasefire in Hamas terminology. It's not a jihadist concept. The ceasefire, there's a hudna, temporary deal in which our enemy rearms itself. That they have. But there's no such thing as a ceasefire as we understand it in today's modern terms. I mean, just to give you an example, as Hamas says that there's a ceasefire on Thursday, right? The Israel Air Force struck targets in Gaza on Saturday in retaliation for incendiary aerial devices launched into southern Israel on Friday. So Hamas says ceasefire. Friday, there's more of these terror kites and balloons being launched and dropped into Israeli nature reserves, causing fires on the border. Israel has to respond on Saturday, and this is all a ceasefire. This is what a quiet looks like. So it's absolutely ridiculous to believe that Hamas has called for a legitimate ceasefire. It just doesn't exist. And apparently Israel hasn't accepted it nonetheless, but it's all a joke. It all means nothing. An arson balloon found outside a dining hall in the Eshkol region in a community there. Another one, one of these kites, these firebomb kites landing on power lines in southern Israel outside a community, cutting off power. All this stuff going on Friday. So don't give me the ceasefire nonsense. Of course, I guess ironically, this week marks in the Gregorian calendar 13 years since Israel pulled out every Jew and dug up every Jewish body in Gaza and pulled out of Gush Katif. 13 years this week, August 15th, is the date on the English calendar. Ironically, this is what we're dealing with now, here, 13 years later. No surprise. Those who recognized back then what a mistake it was going to be, well, I don't know how people still think it was a good idea. There are people who still somehow believe pulling out of Gush Katif was a good idea. Yet, with incendiary kites and balloons and terror tunnels and sniper fire on the border and everything else going on, I don't see how anybody still thinks that was a good idea. National Infrastructure, Energy, and Water Minister Yuval Steinitz, a member of the Security Cabinet, he told Con Radio there was no ceasefire, saying that we hit Hamas strongly, but saying an agreement has not been signed. We're going to keep our cards close to our chests. But he did say the following. He said, ousting Hamas is an option we are closer to now than any time in the past. I don't know. I don't think I'm buying it. I don't think Israel's going through with it. I don't think Israel's taking out Hamas once and for all at this juncture. I don't see it. I wish it was true, but I'm not seeing it. I don't know if he's the lone voice who's saying that. Maybe other ministers are. I haven't seen any other ministers saying it. Unfortunately, I'm not buying it. I think we were just pushing off the situation for another day in the near future, because, Hamas is already rearming down there, getting ready for the next conflict, battle, war, whatever you want to call it, with Israel. So that's the deal. Switching gears here this morning, reported by Times of Israel, IDF gives home demolition notice to family of terrorists who murdered Yotam Ovadia. If you recall, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Yotam Ovadia, 31 years old, was stabbed to death in the community of Adam after a 17-year-old terrorist infiltrated the Yishuv, or community just north of Jerusalem, and attacked several residents there, killing the father of 2. The Israeli military, Monday posted a demolition order on the home of the terrorist, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if home demolitions actually do anything. I don't know if they deter the next attack. There have been home demolitions before. What bothers me is it's a psychological concept here. And I studied psychology, by the way, in college. And this is child psychology, when a kid does something bad and the mother says, you wait till your father gets home to see what happens, to get your punishment. That is bad parenting. I learned that in psychology. It's bad parenting because when the kid does something bad and then he has to wait 5-6 hours before he gets punished, that takes away the deterrent. It takes away the effectiveness of the punishment. If the mother would punish him on the spot, that would make all the difference in the world, based on what I know from psychology. So here you have an attack several weeks ago on July 26th, and now we're talking about today, weeks later, demolishing the house. All that time has passed. Will this be a deterrent? Of course, now the family can appeal to the Supreme Court, and my bet would be, based on other cases of terrorists and terror attacks, my bet would be that at the end of the day, the IDF is told just to destroy the room of the terrorist and not the house. That's my bet. I could be wrong. But either way, if you're going to destroy the home, I believe it has to be done immediately. I think it would be more effective if the family was expelled. That's my opinion. They were expelled from their house, expelled from their village, and sent to Gaza or sent to Syria or sent somewhere else. I think that would be more of a deterrent than this home demolition stuff, where it's a legal game going back and forth. So, number one, whether it's a deterrent or not, I don't know. Home demolitions. Number two, certainly it's less of a deterrent, from what I know, when it happens weeks later. So another reason, folks, why, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad news this week. Going back to the Gaza story, Channel 10, I just saw this. Channel 10 reported that Hamas or their friends in Gaza, or whomever, attempted to smuggle tens of thousands of balloons into Gaza. I kid you not. According to Channel 10, 3 containers full of balloons were confiscated at customs in the Ashdod port, fearing they will become incendiary balloons. All of a sudden, there's a big demand for children's birthday party balloons in Gaza. I wonder why. But in this case, it was confiscated. Another reason why I don't understand why Israel risks the well-being and security of our citizens by allowing the import of goods into Gaza. How many times have we caught at the border with Gaza groups trying to smuggle in different types of weapons and other types of devices? That's even without getting into the fact that whatever is smuggled into, or brought into Gaza, is confiscated by Hamas. Yet we're proud of it. We allow it. It keeps happening. We're bringing in goods to Gaza, and at the same time, whether it's the actual goods we allow in or other goods which we don't allow in, which are smuggled in, time and time again, Hamas is active and is actively trying to bring in these things into Gaza, balloons and whatnot in this case. Luckily, they were caught, but who knows what isn't caught and what isn't seized by Israel. Who knows what gets into Gaza. It's very, very scary. For those who know me, I grew up in the U.S., so I don't have all the ins and outs and understanding of how politics work in England, in the United Kingdom. Labour leader Corbyn photographed laying a wreath for Munich Olympic terrorists. I don't know how this guy, Jeremy Corbyn, is the head of like a major party in England, in Great Britain rather. There is a difference that I've learned between the UK and England. Okay, that I don't want to offend anybody, but I understand, and sometimes I get confused, but I understand there's a difference. That England is a part of the United Kingdom, as are Scotland and Wales and Ireland and whatnot. There is a difference there, especially when it comes to football, soccer, but we're not talking about that right now. But how is this possible? The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, photographed laying a wreath in 2014 over the graves, or on the graves of those who massacred 11 Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics. The Labour leader was said to be attending a service to commemorate Palestinian so-called martyrs at a cemetery in Tunisia, according to the British tabloid The Sun. Corbyn says he was there to commemorate something else, an Israeli airstrike, regardless of what it is, okay? Whether he was laying this wreath at the Munich terrorists or laying a wreath on the graves of other terrorists. Either way, the guy is just a complete anti-Semite, Israel hater, Hamas, PLO, terror supporter, and somehow this guy is the leader of a major party in Great Britain. Did I get it right, Great Britain? I don't get it. I don't know how he's still there. I don't know how anyone tolerates this. He's a terror supporter. I don't know why the people of that country allow him to remain in power. I don't know why he's not in jail for his support of terror. I don't get it. Maybe somebody out there, if you understand this, how Jeremy Corbyn can be in a position of power, this guy laying a wreath for the Munich terrorists, openly supporting in the past Hamas and other terror organizations, recognized terror groups. Somebody please explain it to me. Send me an email, josh@thelandofisrael.com. How is this guy allowed to run a party, a political party, and not be ousted because of his support for global jihad. In 2013, he gave a speech comparing Israel's control of, according to the Jerusalem Post, the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, to the Nazi occupation of Europe during World War II. I mean, this is the guy we're talking about here. Not sure how he is still a leader in that country. The Palestinian Authority, our peace partners, right? They have paid, according to Palestinian Media Watch, $294,332 to the Sbarro bombers, the Sbarro terrorists. 17 years, and we just commemorated 17 years after the suicide terror attack that left 15 dead. The bomb builder and the suicide bomber's family continue to be rewarded with monthly payments from the Palestinian Authority. This in a report by Maurice Hirsch, a friend of the show. He's been on several times. And Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. PA terror payments to them and a third participating terrorist have reached more than $294,000, or over $1 million shekel. And I remember this event on August 9, 2001, very, very well. Unfortunately, I was actually in Jerusalem that day, and I was in the old city when I heard the sirens from just a few kilometers away of that Sbarro massacre. 15 people murdered, including 7 children. A couple and 3 of their children, a U.S. citizen, citizen of Brazil, 130 people injured. The suicide bomber so far has received over $50,000, and all those who were involved also receiving major payments for this attack. This is the true face of the Palestinian Authority. And even though we have the Taylor Force Act, and even though Israel passed a bill recently to withhold tax revenues so that the terrorists and their families don't get paid, the PA still trying to find ways to pay terrorists. This is like a basic premise. This is a basic concept of their societies, to pay those who have murdered Jews. And the more Jews you murder, the more Israelis you murder, the more U.S. tourists you murder. The more you murder, the more money you receive. So that's why these people are making hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Sbarro bombers. These are our so-called peace partners. These are the people that the European Union and the UN wish Israel would sit down with. I say never. I say never sit down with these people. These people are evil. The PLO, Hamas, all one and the same. I don't see a distinction because the members of Hamas have beards and the Palestinian Authority members don't. That's what makes the PLO moderate, because they don't have beards. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And Israel needs to just stop all tax revenues. Stop turning over money to them. I don't believe we need security cooperation with them. I think the IDF is perfectly capable of dealing with the terror threats without the help of the PA. Maybe military assessment would disagree with me there. I think we should do it on our own. I mean, they can't be trusted. They turned their guns against us once before, and many other times before. I was referring to the Oslo War, or the so-called Second Intifada, when the PA police turned their guns against their Jewish Israeli counterparts. Other terror continues in Judea and Samaria. Thank God for the IDF. And, we don't hear a lot about what actually is accomplished in the successful anti-terror operations. And thank God the IDF, while we're sleeping at night, is protecting us each and every night. Times of Israel says, as an example, 11 PA suspects arrested overnight last night who were known for their participation in terror activities. IDF soldiers also found and confiscated a gun and ammunition in the Ramallah area. Troops seized thousands of shekels of terror funds in the Jenin area in the northern Shomron, used for terror activity. So this stuff is going on each and every night. So thank God for the IDF. God bless them. God protect and keep them safe each and every day. So again, here on Israel Uncensored, a lot of frustration for me this week because of everything going on in the news. So, I want to apologize for that, but this is the reality, and I have to bring you the reality. I mean, that's what this is all about, sharing what's going on here in Israel. So that's the negative, but we all, as I always try to do, finish up on something positive. I mean, despite it all, there's still a lot of great stuff going on here throughout the summer. So much going on. The beaches are packed. A lot of festivals going on throughout the country, music festivals, all different types of things going on, activities going on. And we'll finish on a positive note. Tourism in Israel, up again. According to the Jerusalem Post, incoming tourists at 2.4 million, up 17% this year. I know the first half of the year was like a big record. More tourists in the first half of this year, I think, than any other year since the founding of the State of Israel. I think we talked about it on the show a few months ago. But now the tourism ministry announced that 2.4 million tourists have visited Israel since the beginning of 2018, an increase by 17% over 2017. I'm here today broadcasting in downtown Jerusalem, and I have no doubt that when I go grab a bite for lunch, I will see the Mamila Mall packed with tourists as they are each and every day. So that is something positive. People are still coming to Israel. Despite it all, despite the rockets and the attacks and the terror and people waving PLO flags calling for the destruction of the entire state of Israel, not just the settlements, not just Judea and Samaria, the whole country, despite it all, it's really unbelievable, and it's inspiring to see all these tourists here this summer. July, for example, tourism revenue, $436 million, and it's just unbelievable. So let's finish on that positive note. Despite all the madness and all the craziness and all the bad news here, which we had to report this week, but I call it like I see it, folks. Israel Uncensored, that's the name of the show. Don't try to hold back. Try to give it to you as it is, as I see it, for better or for worse. Always like to finish up positive, as I said, and I still say, best time ever in the history of the world to be a Jew, to be here in the land of Israel, no doubt about it. After 2,000 years of exile, our own country, our own army, the Jewish state of Israel, as affirmed by the recent passing of the Jewish nation-state law. So all of that is positive. And with that, we'll conclude. Don't forget to get in touch with me during the week. Josh@thelandofisrael.com. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten. On Twitter, @Josh Hasten. Let me know what you think of the show. Love the show, hate the show. Tell me who you want to see on the show. Which guests would you like to see on the show? I want to try to bring some more high-profile guests onto the program. Let me know who you want to hear from. The decision makers here, those making a difference in the state of Israel. Who would you like to hear on the program? Please let me know. That's a wrap, folks. Most importantly here on July. Ooh, the summer is flying. August the 13th, 2018, the 2nd of Elul, 5778. Wherever you are in this wonderful world of ours, between now and when we speak again, please God, next Monday, everybody out there, have a great week and be safe. Shalom, shalom. From Jerusalem.